I have to admit that I'd never heard of CVJ, at least in the IEM world, until I saw Arco's review of the new Mei. If you don't know Arcos, look his channel up. Great reviews, and lots of reviews. Of course, I'm relatively new to this whole Chi-Fi thing, so it's not all that surprising that I've not heard of a lot of the smaller IEM makers. Still, I've been surfing the IEM review channels for going on a year now, and CVJ has just not come up. I liked what Arcos had to say about the Meis, even given that Arcos seems to be able to find something good to say about most of the new IEMs coming out these days. That's not a criticism. I tend to agree with Arcos that the overall quality of the offerings over the past 2 years has pretty much turned the IEM market on its head, to the point, as far as I'm concerned, where $20 IEMs sound like $50 to $80 IEMs of a year ago. $50 to $80 IEMs sound like $150 to $200 IEMs, and $200 IEMs sound like $400 to $500 IEMs. Times are just good in the IEM world. Anyway, I ordered a pair of CVJ Meis from Hi-Fi Go as soon as they were released, and as with all things ordered from China, they eventually arrived. At $60 US, they are a nice-looking, somewhat understated IEM with a small and lightweight aluminum magnesium metal shell. They come with your usual assortment of silicone tips and a somewhat disappointing 3.5 millimeter single-ended cable, but no case. I ordered the inexpensive TRN 4.4 millimeter balanced cable at the same time as I ordered the Meis. The Meis are a tri-bred IEM with a single dual magnetic driver handling the bass and the low mids, a Knowles BA handling the mids and treble, and a custom tuned BA adding sparkle and detail to the top. The Mei also has tuning switches. But unlike many other IEMs with switches, which attempt to alter the frequency balance by changing the amount of current going to each driver, on the Mei the switches simply turn each driver on or off, or I should say the two BAs. You can have both BAs off, either one on, or both on. I'm not sure that tuning switches make sense on any IEM, but at least the Mei has the advantage of being a very simple design. Personally, I'm not sure why anyone would not want to run the Mei with all three drivers hot, but there is, after all, no accounting for taste, and someone might want to play with the switches. It did take me a while to figure out the little diagram on the back of the box to determine which position was all three drivers on. As always, what I have to say is based on what I hear with my aging ears, with my particular musical choices, with balanced aftermarket 4mm cables and listening to Apple lossless music, either streamed through a Tempotech March 3 desktop DAC amp or as ripped tracks on my Shanling M1S digital audio player. I can pretty confidently say that everyone will be disappointed with the Meis fresh out of the box. As it says right in the instructions, the dynamic driver is one that requires a burn-in period. The longer, the better. Out of the box, the bass is flabby, floppy, and muddy, and all over the mid-bass and lower mids. And they just sound strange. I was convinced that there was a significant volume difference between the two earpieces, as vocals and instruments that occupied center channel with my other IEMs were displaced, generally to the left, which had the effect of swinging the whole soundstage off-center, as though I had my head turned to the side. Disconcerting, to say the least. Don't panic here. Better news is coming. Within a week, the sound of the dynamic drivers had improved dramatically. The bass tightened up and gained whole new layers of texture. The frequency balance or volume of the bass did not change. It just got a whole lot clearer and cleaner. And as it did, I began to appreciate that the strangeness I had been hearing at first was, in fact, just an exceptionally wide and spacious soundstage, with more than the usual separation between voices and instruments, better detail than I was used to, and better instrument placement and directional cues. As an example, on Alison Krauss's Going Where the Lonely Go, Alison sings the verses, but Robert Plant comes in with harmony on the chorus. On most IEMs, Alison is close to center stage, and so is Robert when he comes in. You have to listen carefully to hear the space between them. They're not singing into a single mic. They each have their own mic, even if they are standing next to each other. It's subtle, but it's there. On the Me's, it is just obvious. Allison starts out left of center, and Robert comes in right of center. They sound like they're facing each other from at least a few feet apart, but that means that Allison always sounds just left of center. Of course, I know that Allison and Robert may not even been, likely were not, even in the same room when Robert recorded the harmony, and that this spatial relationship was created by the mixing engineer, but that does not change what I'm hearing. On complex orchestral tracks like Intermezzo No. 1 on the symphonic side of Benny Andersson, a drum hit that is vaguely somewhere right of center on even the best of my IEMs is definitely way over there in the far corner of the stage on the Me's. On a pure percussion piece like Jazz Variants from Ozone Percussion's La Bamba album, you can hear where each bar of the little xylophone on the right is as it's struck, and each bar has its own place in space. And the whole instrument is definitely above eye level and parallel to the edge of the stage, or that's the way I hear it. Or take the track Taj Mahal from Chip Davis and Mannheim Steamroller's Exotic Spaces. There's a percussion run across the soundstage about 1/3 of the way into the track, with a double tap on a deeply resonant Indian drum right in the center, like a quick 1-2 punch to the breastbone. On some of my IEMs, I can hear that it's a double tap, right hand then left, but on some, I cannot separate the two hands. On the Me's, again, it's just obvious. Tap, tap, or punch, punch, right hand then left, almost simultaneous, but not quite, and separated in space by what sounds like the width of the drumhead. You can actually hear not only the temporal separation, but the spatial as well. This level of spaciousness and precision is unusual and takes some getting used to, and is definitely not something I expected to hear in a $60 pair of IEMs. Overall, the Me's have a very balanced sound. The bass, once the dynamic drivers begin to loosen up, is solid and rich and textured with good rumble when needed. Vocals are maybe a bit warmer compared to some other IEMs I have, but they're forward and do not sound at all unnatural. Same goes for cello, violin, and piano, all demanding instruments to reproduce. Very pleasing and very musical. As you might have guessed from my discussion of spatial detail, the treble is airy and light and crisp, just about right, at least for my aging ears. Bells and triangles and shakers are sharp and crisp. Cymbals, maybe not as much. There's maybe a bit of BA timbre there, caused by the fact that the BAs are both right there in the nozzle, a fraction of an inch from your eardrum. Cymbals maybe sizzle a little bit when you might want them to shimmer, but it's a very minor difference. Of the IEMs I have to compare them to, the overall tonal balance is closest to the awful Performer 5. In fact, they remind me a lot of the Performer 5, only with a significantly wider soundstage and more detail. What? How can I be saying that about a pair of IEMs that cost a quarter as much as the Performer 5s, especially when many consider the Performer 5s to be performing well above their price point? The thing is, I don't have anything else in my small collection that sounds like the Me's. They have better bass than the Simgot EA 500, and a considerably wider soundstage and way more detail. The Me's are the reason I could not get totally excited about the detail in the EA 500s. The Me's are more musical and somehow richer than the Letsure S12s, and again have that unique sense of space that is just not as apparent in the planars. The vocals are not as in-your-face as the Letsure Galileos, nor the instruments may be quite as natural sounding. But overall, they present the musical space in a way that the Galileos do not touch. And, as I've already said, they give my Performer 5s a run for the money. And on complex tracks, I'm actually coming to prefer the Me's. I'm going to be bold here and say that the CVJ Me's are not only a great IEM at $60, they're a great and unique IEM at any price, and will give you an experience you are unlikely to find in any IEM under $300. I am, honestly, almost afraid to put that out there. I'm afraid you'll get your own pair of Me's and not hear what I hear, and be disappointed, not to mention think I must be crazy. but I can only go by what my ears hear. And to my ears, the Meis are unique and uniquely enjoyable, and an absolute steal at $60.